What's up, guys? Eric Prey, Focus Fishing Guide Service, Table Rock Fishing Intel. Got another extended video fishing report for Table Rock Lake for you Table Rock Fishing Intel Pro members. It is Wednesday, May the 17th. Been on the water every day except for Sunday and Monday. We had some family health issues, so I missed those 2 days, but everything's good there. Got back on the water the last couple of days, and the bite has actually been pretty good. I'm going to get into that here in a minute. As far as our lake level is concerned, we are at 916.83, which is real close to our normal summer pool, which starting June 1st, normal pool is going to be 917. So the Corps has done a pretty good job of bringing the lake level up by dropping beaver and managing the water that's come in. Water temperature, we're mid 70s pretty much everywhere I go. So we've had a pretty significant warm up in the last couple of weeks. I'm seeing a lot of 73s to 76, 77 degree water temperature. So we definitely have some warmer water, and pretty much I know somebody will tell me that their fish are still spawning, but I have not seen any bass on beds in a week. So if you're finding them on beds, more power to you. I'm not seeing any fish on beds, so I'm going to say the spawn's over. But the bluegill spawn is just now beginning, so keep that in mind as well. Of course, you guys know, being pro members, you get all that information. You find out everything you need to know about catching fish on Table Rock Lake by being a pro member of Table Rock Fishing Intel. Excuse me. Please tell your friends, your family, anybody who you want to help catch more fish on Table Rock Lake to join Table Rock Fishing Intel as a pro member, and they will certainly get all the information they need to catch more fish consistently on Table Rock Lake. Or maybe you don't want to tell them, maybe you want to keep this a secret, but we'd appreciate it if you let them know and help us to help you catch more fish on Table Rock Lake. But if you're coming down, going to fish the lower end. Fished around the lower end today, actually kind of Indian Point-ish to around Cow Creek. So I don't know if you call that the lower end or the upper lower end, but and then fished around the lower end over the weekend as well. And the bite's actually gotten a lot better on the lower end than it has been. Kind of bites that are working. Definitely start every day with a top water. I've noticed a trend, probably for the last 2 or 3 times all over the lake that I've been out, that I'm starting to see fewer and fewer fish going after the surge shad or the redfin, the jointed wake baits. I'm seeing fewer fish go after the wake baits, and more fish seem to be at least a lot more aggressive when it comes to a walking bait, like a spook or a Sammy. Personally, I throw the vixen quite a bit. If you can get your hands on a vixen, those are ideal for this. But it seems like those walking baits, especially one with a loud rattle, have been a lot more effective at drawing strikes and getting good strikes versus blow-ups than the wake baits have been of late. So we're definitely throwing some top water. Have had guys catch them on a pop-bar as well, so keep that in mind. But the top water bait is definitely working. It's working all over the lake, but it's working down on the lower end. The moss, for the most part, is starting to break up. You will hit occasionally. It's like today, most of the places we hit did not have moss. We hit one spot that was bad, fished it for, made about 3 or 4 casts and moved on, but the moss is pretty much gone. So jewel squirrelhead, Ned rig, tube, whatever you like to drag on the bottom in that. Some days are as shallow as 5 feet, but anywhere from 5 to about 15 or even 20 feet. That bite's been working really good down by the dam as well. Primarily catching a few on flat gravel, especially smallmouth on the flat gravel, but it seems like the better bite is where you've got gravel with some rock mixed into it still. And then if you go up into Long Creek, fished up Long Creek over the weekend, caught them on a chatter cricket or jackhammer. Caught them on a squarebill crankbait and caught some on a topwater as well. But anywhere that I'm starting to see bass building beds, I've been able to catch them on a squarebill crankbait, throwing the 6 cents crankbait in a bluegill pattern seems to be my most effective crankbait. And then throwing the jackhammer anywhere I've got wind on post spawn areas, the ends of channel swings, out on those bluffs, around cover. There's a lot more cover in the water now than there was even just a week ago with the lake coming up. So throwing a chatterbait around that cover, especially if you got wind blowing on it, or a spinnerbait for that matter, you can certainly catch fish doing that. Going the mid-lake area, for one reason or another, the mid-lake area has kind of got me stymied right now. I can catch a few, but I can catch better numbers. I can actually catch better numbers down by the dam than I can catch in the mid-lake right now. My theory is we've had all these tournaments And the majority of the fish that that we're seeing and that we're coming across in the mid-lake are release fish. Not saying that they've been hooked so recently that they're not going to bite, but the bite does seem a little bit tougher in the mid-lake around Kimberling, pretty much from, let's say, Cow Creek down to about the confluence of the James and the White. Once you get out of those areas, that main Kimberling City area, the bite just seems to be a lot tougher than anywhere else. But what we've been able to catch them on, of course, the topwater. Still catch a few on a surge shad, but like I said before, the walking baits, a vixen, a spook, a Sammy, those type of baits have been good. And then a popar. A popar has been really good as well. Working it around standing timber, working it around boat docks. We're starting to see those big Kentuckys, those post-spawn Kentuckys get on the ends of those community and commercial docks like they always do this time of year. So look for that bite. That bite, it's not 100% there yet. I figure by next week we'll really start to catch them on it. But usually any of those big docks, I can almost always count on catching at least one or two decent spots off the end of those docks. And occasionally you get a largemouth that'll be in there to fool you. So the topwater bite's been good. The swim bait bite is okay. It's kind of okay all over the lake, but the thing I've noticed with the swim bait bite, at least the last couple of weeks, is that I absolutely have to have shad present. If I don't have schools of shad, and I don't have fish around those schools of shad, I'm having a hard time catching them on a Kitech 2.8 like we were, say, 2 or 3 weeks ago, where you didn't necessarily have to have the shad around. You could just make casts to fish and they would chase it and eat it. Now I really have to have shad around, but you can catch them on a Kitech 2.8. And most of the moss in the Kimberling City area has died off and is going away, so you're dragging baits. Squirrel head, spider jig, tube, Ned rig, any of those baits to work along the bottom, especially in that 5 to about 15 foot range on gravel and rock mix points where these fish are starting to retreat to as they work their way out deep, have been very effective over the past week. Haven't really caught them good on any moving baits in the Kimberling City area with the exception of bigger swim baits. Kind of not really a secret, but we have started catching them on some of the bigger swim baits, at least for now. I don't know if it's going to last through the post spawn, but right now during post spawn, we've been catching them on a mag draft, the 6-inch mag draft. We've been catching them on the dangerous swim bait. And if you can find the Berkeley swim bait, and I can't think of the name of it right now, Berkeley has one as well. The rigged mag draft and the rigged Berkeley swim bait are really easy to throw. Most of the fish are coming either off of brush piles or off of the ends of docks, or even some of them out of standing timber. The dangerous swim bait is unloaded, doesn't have a hook or anything in it, so you either need to convert it to a line through swim bait and put a treble on it and a weight, or throw a belly weighted hook on it. But either way, throwing that thing out and reeling it in fairly quickly around cover and around structure has been working in the Kimberling City area and on up into the rivers, not so much down by the dam. And then the last bite that's working in the Kimberling City area and on up the rivers has definitely been a Carolina rig or even a split shot rig if you don't want to throw a big Carolina rig. Catching a lot of fish out there a little bit deeper on main lake gravel and some of the bigger creeks, the secondary gravel points, keeping the boat about 25 or 30 and throwing up into about 10 to 15 with a Carolina rig with either a French fry or a brush hog or a baby brush hog on it. That's been effective from Kimberling City on up, catching some post-spawn fish that have moved out and are sitting on those long gravel points. Go up in the James River, spent quite a bit of time up the James River last week. I think I had 2 or maybe 3 trips up there, and the bite is very similar up the James, but there are a couple of little changes or a couple of things that are working a little bit different up there. Topwater bite, definitely got to have a topwater on the front deck if you're going up the James River. Spook, Sammy, haven't really thrown a whopper plopper, but like I said, I've been throwing the vixen quite a bit. I seem to be getting more bites on that than I am like a surge shad or another wake bait. But definitely have a topwater tied on, fishing the end of the docks, fishing around standing timber, even fishing some shallow brush, catching them on topwater, catching them on a jig, Jewel Pro spider jig around docks, especially the shallow sides of docks, in the slips of docks, around brush piles around docks. Definitely want to have a jig laying on the deck, something you can work through some of that brush and work a little bit slower, a little bit more effective for those post-spawn fish that are hiding underneath the docks. And then a squirrel head, a Ned rig, or a tube out there on those main lake and secondary points, anywhere from 5 to about 15 foot deep. Those have been very effective up there as well. Moving baits, the jackhammer, spinner bait, or a square bill, those have been working when you have wind around cover. I will say this, I have seen quite a few bluegills starting to make beds towards the backs of some of the pockets and backs of some of the creeks. In those areas, if you can throw a square bill around any cover that's back in there, any laydowns, any stumps, any wood, you're going to probably catch some better fish, especially this weekend. It seems like the bluegill spawn's just getting started, but once it gets going in full swing, and we're going to really start to see some better fish move towards the backs of these creeks and pockets to feed on the bluegill. So keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, the bigger swim bait has been working up there as well, whether it's the mag draft, the Berkeley bait, or the dangerous swim bait. Throwing it around docks, throwing it around brush piles. I tell you, the brush pile bite up there is probably the best. If you know where there's some fairly shallow, like 10 foot deep or less brush piles that you can throw that big swim bait over, it's been very productive. You're not going to get a ton of bites, guys, but the bites you get are going to be better. Most of them have been 3 pound plus fish that we've been catching on that bigger swim bait. So keep that in mind if you're fishing a tournament this weekend. Go up in the White River, spent, let's see, I guess last week I had 2 trips up the White River, one right around Baxter, one further up around Shell Knob. Bite has been strong up there as well. Topwater, of course, is king this time of year. Same as I'm seeing all over the lake. I'm definitely catching fish better on a walking bait, a spook, a vixen, a Sammy, something along those lines, or a popar, versus throwing a surge shad or another wake bait. Starting to see that transition. I'm not saying you can't catch them on a surge shad, just saying what I'm seeing is the fish are moving off of those wake baits and they're starting to move more and more towards the walking baits, especially first thing in the morning. Can catch them on a swim bait up there, but again, we're looking for shad. If you don't have some threadfin shad around, it's difficult to get bit on that little 2.8 swim bait right now. That will probably change when the fish start to move in mass and get out there a little bit deeper and get in those deep trees. We won't necessarily have to have the shad around, but right now you need to have some shad to really be effective with that swim bait. Your dragging baits, squirrel head, Ned, tube, even a Carolina rig or a split shot rig, those are all working up there as well, mostly on gravel and rock mix points, anywhere from about 5 to about 15 foot deep. If you get up in the Kings where the water's got a little bit more color, you can go right to the bank out to about 10 or 12 feet deep and it's a very effective way to put them in the boat right now. Flipping a jig around boat docks, shell knob on up around the boat docks, around the shallow side of boat docks and the slips of boat docks, up the Kings around all that flooded timber and all those log jams on the ends of those channel swings. We've been catching a lot of fish on a jig up that way. Jewel Pro Spider jig's the one I've been throwing, and depending on watercolor, I'm either throwing Okeechobee Blue or Bass Whacker. And then when you get a windy day up there, the chatterbait, jackhammer chatterbait, spinnerbait, or a square bill, especially around the bluegill beds, it's been really hard to beat when you get a windy day and you get these fish up there feeding, getting active. Just throw it around cover, whether it's a laydown, a stump, a log, even we're starting to get a few bushes in the water. I don't know how long the core is going to hold the water up this high, but we're starting to get some bushes in the water. And with the bushes in the water, you can even throw those baits in between the bushes and pull some fish out of those bushes as well. Guys, we are halfway through May. It's almost time for the silly season. We've got the first silly holiday of the year coming up at the end of the month. Can't hardly wait. I will tell you the boat traffic last weekend was pretty intense. Yeah, there was quite a few people out using their boats. So if you're planning to fish this weekend, you might either want to run to the rivers or plan to get off the water a little early, 10, 11 o'clock, because the boat traffic is definitely happening on the lake right now. But the bite's been good. We're catching a lot of fish. We're catching fish different ways. Things are going to be changing. Before you guys know it, I'm going to be talking about drop shot and then spooning until you get sick of it, but that's definitely going to start happening. Starting to mark a few fish out there, 25-ish, close to the bottom, which tells me that some of those Kentuckys, those schools of Kentucky are starting to make that transition. They're starting to move out, and they're going to get out on those points and out in those deep trees before we know it. So if you like to fish shallow, you need to try to get to the lake here pretty quick, because I'm thinking by the first, second week of June, we're going to start talking about drop shotting, which some people like it. I do it because I have to. But anyway, best way to know what's going on all the time, you guys know this, be a pro member, use your pro membership for Table Rock Fishing Intel. Please invite your friends, your family, anybody else that you know who's an angler, who fishes Table Rock Lake, to join Table Rock Fishing Intel. You can certainly catch more and better fish just by being a member, because it certainly clues you in on what's going on the lake on a daily basis. But if you're coming down, want to hire a guide, give me a call. It's Focus Fishing Guide Service. You can reach me at 417-860-4743. Hit my website, focusfishing.com, and you can either book online or shoot me an email. Either way, I get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching the videos, guys. Thanks for being pro members. We really do appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. Can't wait to hear from you. We'll see you on the water.